and welcome to this episode of The Big Picture, where five dudes offer their unsolicited opinions on aspects of media. In this episode, we will pitch in the next game or game series that deserves a remaster for the current gen gaming. But before we get to the pitches, we first need to get to the guys and take care of some housekeeping. So if you're new or don't know, make sure to follow us on both Twitter and Instagram at _The Big Picture. Like, subscribe, share, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. Just search for The Big Picture Podcast. You will find us. Now, we have a habit in this podcast of taking the mick out of everybody, but you know what? I got in touch with my caring side and I decided to try to give everybody a bit of a wholesome introduction. So, to the group, introducing first, he is the Nintendo DS of the group. Nice library, the safe and respectable choice, but he still fits in your pocket. It's Jack Graham. Jack, welcome. How are you doing today?
What part? That was nice.
Now, is it the original DS? Is it the DS Lite? Is it the 3DS? Should I have asked that question?
No, you don't know the answer to that, mate.
I already know which one it is, and I tell you, it's not the first or the last two I said. Yes, I'm very well, very well. I'm looking forward to the episode. I think it's a subject that we're all quite interested in talking about, and may go down nostalgia lane. So it'll be a good time.
Yeah, we will be going down nostalgia lane, and because of that, Jack is really going to highlight our age. And introducing our next panelist, it'll tell him that. He's the Nintendo 64 of the group, the classic machine capable of all situations. But he stays in the closet. It's Stewart Fitzgerald. Stewart, welcome. How are you?
Nintendo 64! Here we go, thank you. Yeah, I was going to make a joke about Jack's stylist, but then you got me. Yeah, good intro. Congratulations, Lewis. And congratulations on being the people's champ, you prick.
I can't. Off the cuff.
Sorry, it's probably when I should tell the world that I am in fact bisexual as well. But anyway, welcome to PS2
on.
The PS2 of the group. Arguably the goat of goats because he's actually a goat. It's Rhys Cook. Welcome. How you been?
Do you know what? That's the biggest compliment anyone could throw. So I'm gonna take it. I'm just pulling it back to the start. Pulling it back to the start of the episode when Lewis said, "Oh, I'm just going to go down the nice route this time." And so far, he's called Jack a pocket-sized Nintendo DS Lite, and he just called Stuart Katie and put it straight up. So good times, Excited to be here.
Yeah,
How dare you read my diary, Lewis?
I thought we were just. Never mind. I can't have a response for that. This has gone off.
Those emails were meant to be secret.
Ugh. And finally, we got the young guy, the new kid on the block. He's the Nintendo Switch. He's new, he's fun, he's young, he's social, but still inherently classy. It's Adam.
Thank you.
That's he get all right.
I like that. Thank you.
Nice, Adam. That's a nice one.
Thank you.
I'm honest, it's because the tail end of that really wasn't for the podcast.
That's fine.
Classy.
Oh no, Lewis, I've got it. Well done.
Yeah, he gets it.
Hey.
The good thing is, I don't. Right. We'll carry on, and Lewis, please take it away.
Yes. So as mentioned, we are in fact tackling remasters, and some people love them, some people hate them, and I want to say a baseline. So this is an open question, but quickly. We'll go to the social media because we asked you the same question. And, you let us know how you feel about it. And the results are in. It's a massive 66.6% of you said, show me the results. So
nice. What was the question?
That was kind of backfired. But whether if you like them, if you like remasters or you don't, most people just want to know what other people thought. So I don't know. I mean, it's a good thing our audience like to know what other people think, because if not, then we're screwed. But we'll take from the other part. 25% of people said they were not a fan, and 8.3% said that you were. So there's no hard conclusions to draw from that, but we can maybe say that people are less of a fan than they are. So we'll go to you, Jack, first. Can you provide some clarity? Are you a fan of remasters, or are you not?
I would say that I'm a fan. I think that it's as I said, like it's a bit of you're going down nostalgia lane, and it's good to kind of play games you would have loved as a child, but like in the quality that we now know games as today. So maybe there's like add more enjoyment to it. Maybe it takes it away, but it's an experience you still want to have. So I would say I like them.
It's a fair point. I think older technology limits your experience, so new technology could technically expand on it. Same question to you, Stuart. Are you a fan? Do you like the culture? Do you not? Or are you mad at me and don't want to talk anymore?
Oh, I'm always mad at you, Lewis. But remasters, yes and no. I think remasters can be a bit of a guilty pleasure for me. Sometimes I just like an excuse to replay those games on a better system with better graphics and features and stuff. As long as the remasters bring something new to the table, that kind of justifies their existence, then I normally wouldn't have a problem with them unless it's like completely botched. I like remasters to have a bit of a gap between them. Like I'd say if a game's around 10 years or older, then it might justify a remastered version. But what really chaps my arse, right, is when a remaster comes out and it's worse than the original in some way. I hate that. Like the Arkham games looked worse than they did in the remaster.
Yeah.
In the original ones, I don't get the point of that. But yeah, they're all right.
This podcast could easily become a good hour long of me ranting about why the Master Chief Collection actually did a disservice to the early Halo games, but we won't get into that. Rhys,
look, what Halo did, right? It was worse than the original. There's nothing worse because they used the same engine, but the textures are all fucked. So I'm standing behind a rock and I shoot somebody. Oh, it misses. Why is that? Because in the remastered graphics, the rock is bigger than the original. Lewis? What is up with that?
We actually should do an episode of that. I'm penciling that in for next week. Sorry, whoever's hosting. So, Rhys, you are, I don't want to say not as a serious a gamer as us, as if that's a title to be held proudly, but you maybe weren't really into some of the older games like we were at the time. Do you think that kind of sways how you feel about remasters? Or are you like, nope, I don't want to go back. We should keep looking forward?
You take that back right now. I feel like this is a bit blasphemous. Where does this come from? As soon as Crash Bandicoot came out, it came out with the PS4 first. I bought a PS4 just so I could play it. So don't give me that. Oh, you didn't really play games as much. And then Spyro came out, so I've got a PS4 Pro, and the only two games I have for it are Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. So I'm not having it. I'm a huge fan of both the remasters and the fact that they obviously look better and that they are harder. They made them harder. I quite enjoyed that fact. But I won't have the blasphemy on my name here.
Right, I'll take that back. You made it clear that you do in fact like it harder. Adam, next question to you is much the same. Do you find yourself, more in line with, I don't want it, or I actually don't mind playing some Nee's remakes?
I quite enjoy a remaster. I kind of agree with Stuart. It's about the gap as well. I think we've seen a lot of unnecessary remasters. I think the one that comes into my head is probably Skyrim. I don't think that needed remastered. I don't think it needed to be upgraded for the next generation. Yet we got it, and we also got. There's a bit. They also just love releasing Skyrim. I think it's Bethesda's favorite thing. I think there's something like 17 different Skyrim editions.
Yeah,
on
I can't wait
platforms.
to play on my Samsung smart fridge for this.
Yeah, it just it will happen. They love it, and but I think I like a remaster where there's a lot of remasters where there's games I actually not played the original of, and I think that for me is a good thing about remaster, is that I can then, if I miss the hype, I can go back and I can play it. Like for example, the COD 4 remaster. There's pretty predatory business with the fact you had to pay £70 to get the special COD to play it, but put that to one side, and also put to the side the fact that about 5 months in, they decided to just add in all the stuff that was in the modern COD, as if people wanted it. No demand, right? But we'll put those.
Why are you doing this to me? My blood is boiling.
We'll put those acts to the side, and we'll just say that I didn't get to play that game as much because that was like Stefan's first COD. So I didn't have an Xbox at that time. So a lot of me was just watching Stefan play that. and I always wanted to, but his Xbox, his rules. So I kind of missed that being able to play it. So when I got to play it later on, and I got to experience this COD multiplayer, obviously it's not exactly the same, but I got to enjoy that. Enjoy actually playing it instead of just watching it. So I think it can be good in that instance. But just ignore the rest of it. Ignore the rest of how much they fuck that, right?
Right, Rhys. Clearly, you've got a blood vessel boiling here. So
No. I know. I agree. The first 5 months of that game were brilliant, and then after that, it was just terrible when you could start buying like bottles instead of knives and stuff like that. But whatever, we move on. I just wanted to ask Adam and Stuart. They had mentioned games that get remastered too soon, and I just wanted to know what their thoughts were on GTA 5, because that's technically, I mean, not really, but it has been remastered, I think, like 4 times since it's come out, because obviously it has to get remastered for different consoles. So I just wonder if that falls into your category of getting remastered too soon, or what you think about
that. I could take that one. I think the difference.
Thanks,
GTA,
Adam. Over to you.
the difference I would say with GTA is that it's got such a big online platform, and they add a lot of content to that, so it made sense for them to move it onto the more powerful hardware. I would, if it was just a single player, I would agree, and I would say, yeah, it's too soon for a remaster. There was no need to just jump it straight onto the next console. But as we say, they do like to add a lot of content in online, so I think that's fair enough. I think it is more of just. It's also, you could maybe say it's kind of like a live IP, like you get with, like they tried to do with like the Destiny and things like that. So that's maybe the kind of comparison I would make there. I don't know, Stuart would have anything different to say.
The only thing I'd say is I agree with them. There doesn't need to be however many GTA 5s. It's purely because of the cash cow. Like they're just milking that well until there'll be nothing left. But to play devil's advocate, if they justified at least one of the remasters, I think we talked about this in the GTA 6 episode, but if they justified it by saying, right, we're bringing out this new GTA 5 remaster, and originally we cancelled the story DLC. It was reported to have story DLC, and then we cancelled it, but we're bringing that back for that remaster. I'd feel a little bit better because it's content that I wouldn't have ordinarily got to have played without this remaster, and but they just don't help themselves. It's just money. And Rockstar, everyone knows how strapped for cash they are, so I just don't get it.
Fair enough.
It's an entirely fair point, and I think to kind of piggyback on like the distance and time between games. I mean, the 2 worst examples have both been given. There's Grand Theft Auto and Skyrim, where they both come out on the Xbox 360, and they've been coming out on every subsequent console and half upgrade ever since. But at least with GTA, they did add something different with the first person mode, and there's like texture upgrades. But I don't think that's enough to justify it by itself. So I guess the inverse question of that is, to all of you, and maybe in Adam Stewart, want to jump off first, then what is then more appropriate of a time to give, and what kind of examples do you think better suits that sort of distance between, whether it's like a full console generation or if it's even further beyond that?
Adam, I'll let you take this.
Thanks, Stuart. Thank you. I think that for a good example, the first one that came to my head actually was actually the Hitman HD collection, which was because the original, so Hitman and so like the original Hitman, which I think's Agent 47, I think that's called, and then Hitman 2 Silent Assassin and Hitman on Contract, so they were PC and early PS2. So they're restricted, the graphics and the gameplay at times it struggled. So they remastered them for the 360. I think that was quite an appropriate one, because I think Agent 47 was, I want to say that was really early. I think that was PC. I think that was 99, I want to say. So I think that those kind of jumps are good. I think when it's a real technology jump, and also it makes a difference in the gameplay. I think, as we said, like GTA, as much as it was maybe a smoother gameplay, it wasn't like you felt totally different. But when you played Hitman in the HD collection, it felt like you could enjoy this game that you'd already played, and also it felt a lot more polished and from a gameplay perspective as well.
It's a fair point. I think it's difficult to quantify because everybody has their own sort of opinions on what nostalgia is. But Adam, you said it as well when I first asked you a question about remasters, is that remastering a game is a chance for it to bring it to a new audience and make some new fans of already established IP. So, you can bring everybody in to show them your world before you then continue on. And the best example I could think of would be the God of War remaster before the God of War PS4 came out, or for Team Xbox. As much as I hate the what it did to earlier Halos, the Master Chief Collection did retell the story, and it's a way to kind of bring in some new fans. So, Jack, I've not heard from you in a while, and anybody else can jump in too. Like, is that really the only strong argument for remasters, or is it enough for you?
I think it's more with I think with a lot of how folk are like going with it. I think it shows that a lot of the games being at least put out to us and now, especially take that COD example, that a lot are just kind of shit recently. Obviously, I think with Modern Warfare and whatever the other one is, like Warzone and all that being out, that's kind of taking a hold, but they had to bring out that remaster to try and at least goad fans into enjoying a COD game again. I'd say that's a lot of the kind of motivation behind a remaster now, is to try and garner the interest back in the fans, because a lot of the time it is just pushing out a game every year just to make that money. And when fans are growing that big disdain, they need to do something. It's like, oh well, they really enjoyed this game, so we can just bring that up to modern technology and brand it as the next best thing and get it going. So that's the kind of way it goes. But I prefer my remasters probably how with what Rhys mentioned with like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. So taking like the games as far back as your PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 times and making that, because that's something that is like a proper nostalgia trip, not something that's released even 5 to 10 years ago. That's futile to me.
You've actually made a really interesting point there that I even thought about, is companies almost weaponizing nostalgia. And I don't think it's anything particularly new. I mean, we're seeing it in modern media now with older IPs coming for a new audience, like Star Wars or The Matrix, Star Trek, anything with stars in it, stars in your eyes. Perhaps, movies are an episode for another day, but Rhys, you kind of look at things historically, and you brought up Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, and so did Jack there. Is this just a modern trend of trying to capitalize on money thing, or is there something more going on here?
I think it's a bit of both. I think you've definitely got a massive audience with stuff like Star Wars, where the Star Wars films, obviously they're making, or in the process of making 3 films. To be honest, no idea, don't watch them. But they're not, from what I've gathered, they're not anywhere near what they used to be. So you've got this huge audience that you can make money out of, but the films aren't quite doing it for them. So you branch off and you go into Mandalorian. You know what I mean? So yes, that is pretty much cash grab, but it is something that a lot of people want. But on the other hand, I think that games like Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, that I don't necessarily think that is as much of a cash grab. I do think that there's almost a demand for it. Since we started this episode, you guys have talked about games like God of War, Skyrim, Assassin's Creed, and these are games that are huge in the gaming universe, but in their own right, games like Spyro and Crash were big out with the gaming universe, and I feel like my pitch is going to touch on this as well. These are games that not just gamers, but your sister, your girlfriend, or even just like your mates that don't really game, but they're more into sports and stuff like that. They loved these games as well, and this is a chance to bring everyone back into that. So I don't necessarily think that games remastered like that are cash grabs, but I do think bringing out Mandalorian is definitely a cash grab.
So Rhys, you make a good point there with actually maybe remasters are a chance to generalize game and make it less niche, because I think there's definitely been a sort of falling in the trap when it comes to gaming now. There's become a bit more niche thing with the games that you say, like your Call of Duties of the world, your Skyrim is a very more kind of fantasy oriented genre. And I guess maybe like the counter to that is, and Stewart, I mean, you're the eldest gamer of all of us, and quite often a complaint under some of these remasters, including even the Spyro and Crash, was this kind of a trend to capitalize on nostalgia, whether it's kind of quality wanted or not, instead of focusing on developing on new IPs and new characters and new stories. Do you find yourself kind of agreeing with that line of thought, or are you like, no, it's fine, the way Crash and Spyro do it is the way it should be done?
I find myself insulted, Lewis, because you call me closeted. Now you call me old. All right. What's a man meant to do? I'd absolutely love to see a focus on new IPs. I'm always happy to see new original games. I think most times I'd rather take a brand new, original game, a brand new thing over a remaster. However, I think something that we've been seeing over the past few years is trend chasing in studios or publishers. They seem to really latch on to whatever's popular. Like, take the battle royale genre or the live service trends. It seems every major publisher's wanting a slice of whatever's most popular, and I completely understand that, because after all, they need to make money, allegedly. But sometimes it's nice when an old video game that was its own thing and didn't bow to market pressure or anything like that comes out back on the scene and breaks that trend. I don't know. Maybe, like you said, it's an age thing. I just want to be reminded of simpler times. I could leave my door unlocked. I don't know.
You can't leave your door unlocked. I go for a walk in the forest for an hour and I don't even close my door. It's just good life out here. Anyway, I just want to further on from Stuart's point there. I think where gaming is right now, you've got your biggest games are like GTA, Minecraft, Fortnite. It's like role play or battle royale. If someone released a platform game in modern times on the PS4 or the Xbox, it's going to tank 99 times out of 100. So to release, Spyro or Crash, these old games, I think other games now, if you did release a new game, wouldn't compete with these. So to do a remastered version, I think is a lot simpler, and I think it's what people want.
I think that the thing is, as well, is probably more looking at it from a game developer's standpoint as well, that obviously way back when we were wanting our games remastered from, gaming still huge, but obviously in this time where we're at now, 2021, gaming is one of the biggest sources of media and entertainment, just period, full stop. With how with all your different streamers and the social interaction that games get, and hashtags, and how they're able to get gaming spoke about in the world today. But with that, say one streamer hates a brand new game that came out, say that streamer, say for instance, let's say it's Minecraft. There's that streamer right now on Twitch, Tommy Innit. He gets about 600,000 views at a time, concurrently. Watch that. If he shits on something, that audience will probably just tend to agree with it, and that's probably the fear for game developers at that point as well, is if they do put out something original and say a streamer the size like Tommy Innit or Ninja or something like that does just shit on it, so many other folk will just follow because that person said it. So if they just do remaster something that was enjoyed way back when, the shit they would get is probably minimalized. So from that, you can imagine that they're just thinking to bringing out remasters from that sense as well.
Just to add to what Jack's saying, I think this is the reason. The thing Jack's has said is the reason why you'll find there's so many sponsored streams, sponsored videos that these content creators do, because companies are afraid. They don't want to give people a game and just say the old review copy, but see what you like. They want to be well, we'll pay you and you play it, and come on, we're paying you. So don't be too harsh. Even if you don't like it, you've got to be constructive. You can't just be this is shit. So I think that's the reason why, is because they try and protect themselves from this criticism. And then obviously, if you get a big enough streamer to promote it and say, "Oh, I really enjoyed this game. Look at me enjoying it," and the big fucking the big game developer crest in the background, then obviously they can get a start, and then people start playing it. And even if they don't enjoy it, they've already got the sales. They've already got people enjoying and playing the game.
I think it's definitely part of that culture where if something, it's much easier to attack something that's brand new that comes on the scene as opposed to like the established IPs. And the thing is, companies are more afraid to like put new IPs out there, and sometimes I think they'll honestly set them up to fail. Take example, Anthem by EA and BioWare. That game completely tanked out the gate, didn't recover at all. You know, it's something brand new from a established developer. But say that was a remaster. Look at Master Chief Collection. That was equally shit when it came out. It was buggy as all hell. Like nothing worked. But because that's an established IP and one of the like Microsoft's most popular brands, they've worked like the studio worked for years and years and years to get up to scratch. And that game is completely different. It's fantastic. It's all working, and they're still adding seasonal updates with all this new stuff that you can get. But that's only because it's the Halo brand. If that was any other game, it would have just been put out to pasture and left to die. And I think it's a shame because new IPs, it's harder to push above the rest. But like you said, it's something that's established and earns money. The company's always going to go to the aid of that rather than a new IP, and I hate that.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised Rhys didn't jump in there, because it's almost as if it's a cancel culture, or so to speak, where anybody that kind of comes with a new idea, it is completely crapped on, or the risk to take it is no longer worth it. I mean, one thing I can think of, I was trying to think of games that are similar to like Spyro or Crash Bandicoot. The only one I could think of was Super Lucky's Tale, which was like an Xbox One exclusive game, and it was free and still nobody played it. And I don't think people kind of gave it a fair shake. It kind of went down the wrong way. But one thing that I kind of want to touch on that Jack briefly mentioned was that gaming is becoming so much bigger now. And we've seen people are having issues with getting their hands on these new consoles. And I'm wondering, because supply is becoming a little bit harder, not just with the current gen consoles that come out, but even like previous ones, it takes a while for it to catch up. That itself is kind of pushing gaming into more of a niche thing. So it's becoming more, I don't know, problematic for game producers to kind of cater to a wider audience, because it's now become segmented.
Yeah, I thought I'd just come in there. Well, just to briefly kind of talk about what you're saying, I do kind of agree with game becoming more segmented. I think it's interesting as well is that game studios, they're so afraid of failure now. But I think it's interesting just to look back and we talk about how games used to be made. And obviously you're not always afraid of failure. No one wants to fail. No one is like putting out games just like, fuck it, we'll see what happens. But games would come out and they would fail. And then the company would sometimes release another game on the same IP. And I'm talking, there's times when games, quite often you would maybe happen with a sequel. So I don't know. I'm struggling to think of a particular example, but there's obviously been games where they come out and they release the original, everyone loves it, and then the sequel comes out and everyone's like, oh, this isn't as good. This definitely falls short. But then the company says, all right, we made a mistake there, and they come out and they make the next game. They listen to fan feedback, but you wouldn't get that now. If someone released a game and it went really well and they released a sequel and it bombed, they would just go, well, we're not touching that property again. It's dead in the water. I think but then it's because of this culture that we're in now that it's such a, I think people just want to make, I was going to say maximum profit. Obviously you want to make the most money, but I think the profit margins are so huge now, and the game developing costs are bigger. So the cost for failing is so large that it's just so difficult now to be brave and put out an IP, and then if it struggles, to then back it up and keep going.
I think we're being a bit harsh on like game developers here, because I can't really think of many games that get released now where you would make a sequel to it, because we've got this way of gaming now where we can just update the game and just constantly update it. So there's not going to be like a Fortnite 2. But PUBG made new maps, but they didn't make a new game. And then you get like, I feel like when we were talking about games that if they bomb at the start, they don't get updated, or they kind of lose interest and they don't make a sequel or that. But there's games like No Man's Sky, which just bombed drastically at the start, but is now a brilliant game and is really well respected and really well enjoyed by the fans. So I feel like we're being a bit harsh to game developers here. But I don't know. That's just my opinion.
I understand what you're saying, Rhys, but I just want to say that No Man's Sky is not a great game. And I think Stuart was probably going to say the same thing. And then Jack would also agree with me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I've heard from a lot of people that No Man's Sky now is a lot better than what it was at the start, and is actually really fun.
I mean, that's a low bar to jump over, to be honest.
I disagree that it's a lot better than it was at the start. But it's like Lewis said, it's a very low bar. It under-delivered so much on the promises it made that now it's just starting to fulfill those promises. I don't know. I don't think we should be praising game developers too much for promising so much, not delivering, and then later on adding it into the game. I think that's actually the kind of thing that we should actively discourage because.
Is that not what we just did with Halo?
No.
Oh well, it's very similar, but.
No, like with Halo, the developers have come in and like completely overhauled the game. Like they didn't have to. And again, I don't know whether that's the studio or Microsoft or whatever. My point about Anthem is like EA, the publishers they set it up to fail. And EA has done that before. Take for example Titanfall 2. They put that out slap bang, which is a fantastic game. They put it slap bang in a crowded release to kind of chokehold it because I don't know why, but they're guilty of doing stuff like that. I don't have any problem with developers because developers, they make the game to the specifications. It's the publishers that deal with releases and when the game has to go out, despite the fact it's not ready. Take for example like Cyberpunk. That game needed to be delayed years, but it's not the developers that made that choice. I think it's difficult because No Man's Sky. I don't know who the developers of No Man's Sky. I don't know who the publisher is, but if, as far as I can recall, they were a relatively small developer and they're new on the scene. If they hadn't repaired No Man's Sky, that company would have just gone from existence. I think it's in their best interests to overhaul that game and make it, actually good. I don't know who you've been speaking to, Rhys, but I played that last year and it crashed my console 3 times. So if that's what it's like now, I shudder to think what it was like, when it came out. But big developers that can take the loss more often than not probably will take the hit and focus their attention elsewhere. And that sucks for the game. If it's a brand new IP like Anthem, you'll probably never see Anthem again. It probably had a lot of promise, but we'll never know because EA has just charted it as a loss. And I hate that. That's what my point was.
I think the worst thing that happened with the just to go back on Titanfall, Stuart, you can't mention Titanfall and not have myself pipe in and talk about it. But the worst thing about that was that obviously Respawn wasn't bought over by EA at the time of the first release, but between that and the second game, that merger happened and EA bought it over, and it was after that, after Respawn was bought by EA, that the release date of the game got set, and they set it in between the new Call of Duty that was coming out, and it was a week after that was when Titanfall 2 would have came out. But the week after that was when the new FIFA would have came out. So it's sandwiched in between 2 games that get released yearly, both £60 each, that folk will buy because it's Call of Duty and FIFA. Folk buy it for the namesake alone. So I've always been in the opinion that they did that to make sure Titanfall purposely failed so that they couldn't do any of their original IPs unless it had the EA seal approval, that EA branding, that as an EA IP, that's their thing, and that's how like Apex's came from that. But I think they did that to purposely fail Titanfall 2. But obviously we benefited from it because a month later when you had the Black Friday deals, we got it for like £20, and it's the best £20 I've ever spent.
Absolutely, hands down. Yeah, best 20 quid ever. Yeah, Jack's already made the point I was going to. To put my tinfoil hat on, EA probably saw, right, we've got a really solid crew with Respawn. We can't be arsed with Titanfall. Shove it out, right, Respawn. And then like a month later, they're like, right, Titanfall really tanked. We're not focusing on that now. We want you to make Apex, And then they'll be like, well, hang on a minute, only tanked because you put it out. And then they're like, no, tanked, make Apex. Like, that's probably the ins and outs of developers. I mean, EA is hardly known for being, an angel in the business. And of course, we have, and this is all speculation. EA, please do not come after the Big Picture podcast. We all have jobs, we have families to feed, but you're evil.
Yeah. And just to add to what Stuart's saying, I think it's very much just a case of needful things, and they come in and they say, "We'll help you. We'll help you make a game," and it's but they did. But no, don't worry. We don't want any money for it. We don't want to. We just want to. Don't forget about the curse that comes with it. They've walked to the shop. It's the devil behind the counter. It's whoever the head of EA is. I don't know. I've never seen them. They're faceless, and they've just gone, "Yeah, we'll help you out, but also we'll definitely hamstring your company and then take it over."
Do you know who EA is? If you had to make them a movie character, they are the Rumpelstiltskin from Shrek Forever After. See, when you're kind of making that thing there, he's enticing Shrek in to sign the contract to have like a better life. That's what EA do to these wee developers like Respawn. Like, here, sign this contract. We'll give you all the money to fund the game. Just meet these targets that are way above what you'll actually get, and you'll fail.
I like how Adam actually compared EA to a Stephen King character, and then Jack made it about Shrek.
I'm making it like oh, fine, Stephen King, right? Cool, but folk are going to go Shrek. You know what I mean?
That's great. Put that in the box. Put that in the poster.
Stephen King, right? Cool, but it's a fair point, and I, as the host, I need to try and stay impartial, but I'm not going to because I'm not the biggest fan of EA. But you look at Titanfall 2, EA is publisher and part owner of Battlefield, and yeah, I've been watching a lot of Suits, which is a law show. It's not that big of a jump to say, hey, we can buy and hamstring this company, that's going to improve our IPs, we're going to sell more, we're going to be around, and they're not. Then what happens out of it? They still get Apex Legends out of it and make a whole bunch of money. So yeah, I don't think it's that much of a tinfoil hat excuse to put on there, Stuart. I'm in support of you for that one. But I think we've had a very extensive discussion on this, so I think it's about time we go out to our pitches. And to make sure we don't run too long, I'm going to make Adam go first. So Adam, what's your pitch? Give us a go.
Thank you. Actually, it was want to go first. I don't know why, I just had a feeling that I wanted to go first. And my pitch for a game to be remastered is Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And for some quick background, it was an RPG released in 2006 for PC, Xbox 360, and PS3. I think as it is an early 360 RPG, a lot of the technology, from a technical standpoint, definitely doesn't hold up as well as a lot of games on the 360, which is why I think it deserves a remaster. It holds a lot of memories for me. It's probably the gem of my Xbox 360 career. I have over 1,000 hours in Oblivion. I know it back to front. I have an Oblivion guidebook someone gave me in school, and sometimes I just read it. I just like to read it. I like to remind myself about all the things in the game. I still play the game a lot today as well. And I think there's about 3 reasons why I think it should be remastered. I think it, in terms of plot, depth, and the actual mechanics of the game, I think it still stands up today. I still think you could stack it up against any RPG, and if you took out the graphical conversation, the technology conversation, I think it would stack up. Even the sequel, Skyrim, which also came from Bethesda. I also think it deserves the cosmetic and technological upgrade of a remaster. I think if it had that sleek polish, it would become one of the most popular RPGs in the next gen scene. I think that just from a marketing point of view, it makes sense. I think there isn't a strong batch of RPGs right now recently. I think to go back to the last great RPG on Xbox was probably Witcher 3. The last major RPG was Cyberpunk. We know how that went. And I think there's a young generation right now who are out looking for single-player RPG games. They've not really had that full RPG experience. Like me when I first got my Xbox 360. And I think they would love this game and they would jump at it. And I think also, if you're looking at it from a business point of view, Bethesda, they would like it because it would get a lot of hype. People would want to play the next Elder Scrolls game. They'd also probably want to buy one of the 25 editions of Skyrim on whatever device they happen to have. And the last reason I think it deserves a remaster is because the age of the game makes it a perfect candidate. We talked about that. We don't want it to be too recent. I think it's not too old, that it would require a total rework and changes to game mechanics. And I also think it's not so new. I don't think everyone's played it. I think you have to be kind of certain at a 360 generation to have played it. I know it's on the Game Pass right now, but I think it's a game that people would look at. They would see how, I'll be honest, I love it, but I could see how people who play games of today would think that looks ugly. And I think if you looked at it, if you gave it that polish, I think we'd be introducing a whole new generation to one of the greatest RPGs of all time. And I just want to say thanks for listening, guys. Any questions, please send them on.
I will say that I really enjoy Oblivion. I enjoy it. I don't have the amount of hours that you've put into it, but I really do enjoy it. However, I feel that there is quite a few things. If you were to bring Oblivion to the point of where gaming is today in a remaster, I think there's too many changes that would need to be made so that it's more kind of a remake than a remaster for me anyway. But I think what you said was that you said that the mechanics would be that hard to change in the game. You said something along those lines, didn't you?
I said that they wouldn't need to be changed. I don't really think so. I think it would stand up. I don't think you need to change anything mechanically.
Instantly, as much as I enjoy Oblivion, I feel that the physics of the game are shit. I feel that the combat in the game is pretty poor. So I think there's quite a lot in that sense. I think even like the way that you're just like jumping about and moving, I think there's a lot that you would need to change from that point to bring it to where we are the now. And I feel that even giving it that facelift, it just feels like it would just be a Skyrim with a different story. I don't know if there'd be much worth or change to bring it to this point. I would absolutely love it, and I would play it. Deaf folk would buy it because it is one of the games. But do I think it should be the next game? I don't know.
I think I disagree. I'm not gonna, it's opinion, and Jack, I respect your opinion, you know that. But I would say that, as someone who still plays the game regularly, like myself, and I do play it alongside playing all the new RPGs that come out, and I do really keep up with the modern games. I think that I don't know. I think I was actually going to make this point earlier about it. I never really got a chance. Is that sometimes when you go back and play an older game, the nostalgia kind of carries you at first, but then you're like, this game is tough. This doesn't control very well. The camera shit or something like that. There's something that stands out that you're like you never noticed when you were younger, and then it's obvious when you play it again. I think I've never had that with Oblivion. Something's never happened to me, and I thought like this would have ruined the game for me if I played it for the first time now. For me, a lot of the gameplay is still smooth, which I think is quite impressive considering the age of the game. But fair enough, Jack. I take your point on board. I appreciate your opinion.
That was a good pitch, Adam. Obviously, if we go with Oblivion, we'll have to then get sit in for the next 7 Oblivion remasters that you probably can actually play on your Samsung fridge. But this isn't a critique; it's just a question I have, because I kind of went through a similar line of thinking. Because I was originally, like, once we get into my pitch, future spoilers, I was going to do a game, and then I thought, well, why do this game when I can go further back? Would you think perhaps something like Morrowind would be a better starting point for a remaster, and then then continue to Oblivion, and then our 20th remaster of Skyrim? It's just a question.
Yeah, I think it's interesting one. It's something I've pondered myself. I've definitely not played as much of Morrowind as I have Oblivion, and obviously when I played Morrowind, it was going back. I was taking a step back to play Morrowind, not like I played Oblivion when it came out. I think with Morrowind, the thing would be you would have to make a lot of gameplay changes because it's a hardcore RPG. This is something. It's basically Daggerfall but 3D. If anyone's ever played Daggerfall, which I have. And it's solid, and I think it's so unforgiving at times. I know people enjoy Dark Souls, but I think it's unforgiving in a different way. In terms of you don't get a compass, you get very little guidance, but also you get these huge menus of text and things to work through. And I just think today's audience wouldn't find that as intuitive, and they wouldn't enjoy the challenge of that. They would kind of prefer the kind of middle ground of Oblivion. I think you could say maybe Skyrim holds your hand too much, and Morrowind doesn't help you enough. I think Oblivion kind of comes right in the middle, which I think is why it makes it a good candidate for a remaster over Morrowind.
That's a great answer. I just want to let everyone know I've never played an Elder Scrolls game, so good stuff.
Yeah, like Stuart, I've also never played an Elder Scrolls game. I just want to say my neighbour has decided to start chainsawing, so if you hear that in the background, my apologies. My only thoughts really here were you said that we need another huge RPG game, and then you said obviously that Cyberpunk tanked and it did. And then you referenced, was it Witcher 3? Because that only came out this year, wasn't it? So
no, that was 2018. 2018 that came out.
Oh, well, I take it back. Either way, I still think that we've got a lot of good RPGs, but at the same time, you know, the two most sold games of all time and every year the two most viewed games on YouTube are RPGs in Minecraft and GTA 5. And I know obviously they're a like different style of RPG, but do we really need another RPG to be the next game? Certainly, if they're not going to compete at the level of GTA 5 and Minecraft, is it really a gap in the market that we need to expose?
I think for me they are like a totally different style. I know you said they are different styles, but I think it's such a contrast. I know. I think it's you can be very loose in calling GTA a role playing game. I don't think that would have like 100% agreement across the board. I think people would see it in a different way, and I think that it would represent a total change of pace. I think you could even talk about Minecraft more as a kind of simulation. If the world was all blocks. But no, in terms of that's more of a creative game, and GTA is obviously a little bit different, and it's almost more multiplayer based. Although it does have a great story, I'm not denying that. I think it would be such a contrast. I don't think many people would compare them. I don't think many people would take that view of it's another RPG. I think people would actually see it as this is a style we actually haven't seen for a while.
So Adam fending off quite a lot of criticism. Oof, spicy. But it's a great pitch. I mean, you covered some of the kind of big things that we all agreed on that we find is key for a successful remastering. Though this could be a chance for Bethesda to gain some sort of good faith following the disaster of Fallout 76, as well as like I actually do agree with you. I think there is a little bit of a gap in the market, and it'd be interesting to see like prior to this next Elder Scrolls game, if something like Oblivion could come in, fill that hole, and then get people excited for the next one. But we shall move on to our second contestant. Now, he mentioned in his critique of Adams that he was kind of struggling to pick his timeline. So, Stuart, let's hear what you've got.
Thanks, Lewis. I also have a pitch that Rhys is going to absolutely fucking hate. So I actually had a really tough time picking this game from a pitch because, first of all, my main choice had been stolen in a completely undeserved payback by Jack, which we'll get on to at some fucking point. I don't know, I'm going to leave the call. And secondly, most of the games I would pick either have had remasters or are probably too niche for anyone to really remember them. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think we need to reintroduce a lot of like niche games to give them a new audience. So I did finally decide on one, and that is the original Fallout game that came out over 20 years ago in 1997. Now, originally, as I said before, like kind of similar to Adam's thinking, I was going to go with Fallout 3, but I thought, why stop there? Why not actually go back and go right to the beginning and show the actual roots of the Fallout franchise? Beside Fallout 3 and a lot of the other Fallout games, you can get really good mods for them on PC. So sometimes they might not necessitate an actual remaster, but you can't actually play this one at all on any console. It was for PC only. So I think it'd be good to open that up to a new audience if we put them all on console. Now, we all know the Fallout franchise. It's one of the best known RPGs out there. The games didn't start getting popular until Fallout 3. And before then, they weren't first-person shooters. They were turn-based games, kind of like the newer South Park games. So you played as an inhabitant of one of the infamous vaults who's lived there all your days. But one day, the vault's water supply starts failing, and you have to go outside and try and find a replacement or an alternative so that you can save the rest of the vault. That's the main mission. But you can obviously explore the wasteland around you, do other quests. but you still have to do the main mission of fixing that water supply in a set time. Otherwise, everyone dies. Not in a game over kind of way, but in a you failed and you get the worst ending kind of way. I think this would be a great way to show everyone where Fallout's roots are because, like I said, the original is only available on PC. But not only that, I think, as I mentioned, we've just got the Microsoft buyout of ZeniMax and Bethesda Studios. So I think this is actually very practical because if they are looking to capitalize on all of these IPs they just bought, what better way than starting with the Fallout franchise, of remastering them all the way at the beginning, and then working their way up to like the likes of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Because like we talked about earlier, getting audiences caught up in the franchise as a whole is a good entry point for a lot of people. So I think that is a good idea. Before you ask, Rhys, my remaster would not brick your console. In fact, if old Todd Howard and Uncle Phil hear this and decide to make it happen, I will get you your very own Fallout 76 Series X. You're welcome. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much, Stuart. For everyone wondering, Jack, Adam, and Stuart and I were looking for a game to play, and they were like, "Oh, we should download Fallout 76." And as I've alluded to,
I fucking never said. I didn't say a thing. I didn't want to install that at all.
I don't live where there's good Wi-Fi, so it takes like days for me to download something. I think it's like 80 gigs this game, so I left it on overnight, thinking, you know that'll speed it up a bit. Come downstairs, my Xbox literally died from trying to download Fallout 76, and I've had to go back to the original Xbox One because I still can't buy an Xbox Series X. So I don't want another Fallout game. My actual point is, while you were doing your pitch, I googled how many Fallout games are there, and some of the suggested questions were: is Fallout 76 good yet? And why is Fallout 76 so bad in capital letters? And my point for you then, Stuart, or my question is, if we get a remaster of Fallout, the original Fallout, would it not just become a cash grab if it becomes successful, and they end up remastering all the Fallouts? And if so, is that not just part of the problem that we discussed at the start of the episodes?
I mean, yeah, it is the problem. We'd all absolutely rather have brand new games, but it's not so much of a cash grab because I don't think anyone would think a turn-based game would be anything but a cash grab. I think this kind of lets people know if there is a market for this kind of thing, because you look at the new South Park games, they're turn-based, and I don't think anyone would have thought, oh, that turn-based South Park game's going to really, break the bank and make it, but it did. So I think to kind of go back to those roots and introduce people to this new, like Fallout's more than just an FPS, and also having a turn-based game as opposed to an FPS, it's a lot harder to break because it's more simpler. Furthermore, I think like Microsoft will probably just say to Bethesda, right, okay, get your shit together and make an actual good game. We just bought you for $7 billion, I think it was. We don't want you churning out games that are absolute dog shit. So I think like yes, it's a part of the problem, but I don't think it's like quite as egregious as other cash grabs. I think it is a bit more unique than those. So it's there for the franchise, but it is a brand new experience should people want to play it, because I don't think people really remember that Fallout didn't just start at Fallout 3.
I think you kind of answered what I was wanting to say / ask in that, Stuart, but I'll say it anyway in case I got it wrong or I just misunderstood it or something. But as you said there, a lot of folk probably did start at Fallout 3 or like New Vegas, and maybe even more so just playing it about Fallout 4 when it got to that Xbox One X side of things before we're playing it. But I've never played the first Fallout, so I've never experienced it in that turn-based format. But obviously, the majority of players that probably played it new outweigh the amount of players that would have played it back when it first came out, that first game. So they're used to a kind of certain way of playing it. Do you think that bringing back the original version with keeping that turn-based format would still be enjoyable for folk that have played 4 in New Vegas and whatnot and enjoy Fallout in that certain way and seen it where it was back then. Sorry, could that still be enjoyable for folk? I don't know. I don't know if there would be the same appreciation for that being remastered as a 3 would be remastered. Like I get why you'd want that one to be remastered, but I don't know if there would be that same appreciation and enjoyment for newer folk that are playing this series to enjoy it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because you're right. It is more niche. Like there's going to be a lot of people that if they see they'll see Fallout and they'll immediately think, Fallout 4, Fallout 3. You know, it's going to be in line with that. I think you probably have to make it clear what kind of game it is, but you probably still have people that won't be happy about it. But what people really like about Fallout, and this is where it started, was how good the writing was and how good the dialogue was, because it's not all like text based. There's people that they've got dialogue, they've got people saying these things. It is really witty, and there's that dark humor that makes Fallout. So the feel is there. Like you'll play it and you'll think, I'm not playing a Fallout FPS, but I am playing a Fallout game. Also, the game is still really popular on Steam. I know that's easier because it is like a PC game for a PC platform, but I think it would be easy to adapt. And I think it is important to kind of show the true roots of the franchise rather than the popular roots, if that makes sense, with just Fallout 3 and New Vegas. I would love to for them to work their way up to them eventually, but I think it is important to kind of start there. That's where I wanted my starting point to be.
Stuart, hi. I would just say, not a critique, but did you know you can play Fallout 1 on an Android phone?
I did not know that, no. It probably runs better than it would on my laptop, but I didn't know that. So there you go. Like the infrastructure's there for a port. I wouldn't want just an easy port, but at least it shows that it's still accessible now with current technology, I guess. But phones, you can do anything in these days, can't you?
You play Skyrim on them as well, I heard.
So it's definitely something unique. I think you bring up, Stuart, there, especially with Fallout 1. Unique then and kind of forgotten about now is actually being punished or rewarded for the decisions you make in games rather than just do a quest in the game. You could fail, you could succeed depending on what you chose. It could definitely, revamp the series, bring some faith back following 76. And to be honest, as much as, Jack's point there about potential issues with coming from an FPS to a turn-based thing, there's no denying that JRPGs are just as popular today as they were ever. Look at the Final Fantasy success and the last console generations where they're remastered. So it's definitely interesting, unique, and we'll see kind of what the world thinks of it. But we'll move on to the next one. And this one, 50-50, we'll go with Rhys. Rhys, what's your pitch?
Well, Lewis, my pitch. So the first ever console I had was PS1, but I fell in love with gaming during the PS2 and then the 360. So the two remastered games, like I said earlier, the ones that I love the most are Spyro and Crash Bandicoot. So I'm going for games which have a similar balance of nostalgia and actually being a good game. But before I say what I want, those games were quite clever in my opinion because they released 3 games for the price of 1. Because even though you do want these games remastered, you shouldn't have to pay modern prices for like a PS2 or a 360 game. So I've gone for 3 games as well. The first of which is The Simpsons Road Rage. This is a very good staple of a Simpsons game. It's got a lot of the cast. The objective is fun. The story is good. I think it deserves a place in these 3 games. I was going to say The Simpsons Skateboarding until I found out recently that it was widely considered one of the worst games of all time, which broke my heart. Next, a game which I think is probably the most underrated game of all time is The Simpsons game. This game came out around a similar time to the Simpsons movie. And it's insanely meta. It constantly makes fun of different games, and has loads of missions, different game references, brilliant missions, clever concepts, fully open world, good graphics, especially for the time, excellent scripting, hilarious jokes, and it's the only Simpsons game to date where you can play as Maggie. And if that doesn't have you hooked, the final mission is not only fantastic, it's incredibly meta, very funny, cool, clever, just all round brilliant, and it's definitely one of the greatest final missions in any game. And that's not just my opinion. I've read a bunch of articles and I've watched a lot of YouTube videos where people say the same thing. I don't want to spoil it because it's genuinely a fantastic ending. I do think everyone should play it. I've recently acquired a PS2, and I've been playing. I've been playing the Chicken Little game recently, but I've got the Simpsons game ready to play because I genuinely am excited to go through it again because I really loved that game and the ending to it is just so funny. And finally, the third game of this trilogy has to be Hit and Run. I don't really need to give much reasoning for this one. It's a well-loved game. The demand for it to be remastered is very high. If you watch people play it nowadays, you still get the same love. They still love it. It genuinely holds up against modern games. Everyone loves it. It needs to be remastered. And I'm going on a different level from all you guys, apparently, with my pitch, because I've gone down the nostalgia route. This game, these three games, sorry, especially Hit and Run, generally I think would bring in a huge audience to it and it would do incredibly well. Like I touched on earlier, people that maybe aren't gamers, they do, they have other hobbies and that gaming isn't their priority. They would love these games to be brought in as well, especially Hit and Run. So if you're going to vote for my pitch based on one game only, I would go for Hit and Run because everyone wants it back. So my pitch is to have the three Simpsons games remastered, or these three Simpsons games remastered in Road Rage, the Simpsons game, and Hit and Run.
Nice. I like it, Rhys. I'm a big fan of Hit and Run. I have played the Simpsons movie game, but not for a long time, so I do remember it being quite meta as well. I never played Road Rage, but I'm sure they're all good games. I just have my question's kind of more around the fact that, you never mentioned it, but The Simpsons is actually quite a famous TV show, just in case our audience don't know. And I'm just wondering, it's actually, Simpsons gets viewed a bit differently by the newer generations because the later series definitely aren't as strong. And a lot of people who are, a few years younger than us, and they're at the point where it's not, they've not really seen the best of The Simpsons and it's viewed in a different way. Do you think these kind of people would still want to pick up this game and play it, or do you think they would maybe be turned off by the fact that it's just some old show that they don't enjoy? And by the way, I love The Simpsons, in case anyone thinks I'm bashing it there.
It's an interesting question. You could say the same about South Park, and as Stuart mentioned, their most recent game has done very well. And then you could also say games like Spyro and Crash Bandicoot are platform games, and they did incredibly well when they sold again. Modern gamers, young people growing up, they're more into your Fortnites, your battle royales, or your RPGs. But the Spyro and Crash Bandicoot games did phenomenally well. So I don't think that it would necessarily impact it in almost any way. I think it would be incredibly popular, and I think you might even see people buy consoles just to play them because I think the demand for especially Hit and Run to be remastered is huge.
Thank you.
That is a dirty move to have 3 games. 3. I'm appalled.
I don't know. Well, because
I'm
Spyro
shocked.
and Crash both did it, so I don't see why it would be weird to have another game but be remastered with 3 games.
I'm appalled at what I'm witnessing today. Would I play them? Yes, but that's not the point because I did play Simpsons Road Rage. I played that on the Sega Dreamcast because I am just that fucking old. But anyway, so yeah, I think I played Road Rage more than Hit and Run, but Hit and Run was great. But you said yourself that Hit and Run still really well holds up. Like even to this day, it's still got a huge player base and everything like that, and apparently like a lot of people streaming it. So does it need a remaster then, if that's the case? If it holds up that well, I don't know how a remaster would impact that at all.
Well, it's interesting, Stuart. Do you own a PS2?
No.
Would you play it?
No.
You just said you would, so I'm not having that. I think it does have a player base right now, and people do stream it, and people do play it on YouTube. But I don't think it has as much of a player base that it definitely could have. Plus, the graphics, maybe, they were good at the time, definitely not good now. To have it remastered, buttons would be less clunky as well. I think it would just deserve it, and I think it would get millions of sales, like tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions, because I genuinely think there's such a demand for hit and run, especially to be remastered.
Fair enough.
I agree. It's a bit of a dirty move. I think the comparison to Crash Bandicoot and Spyro was a bit off, purely because they're not branded as a game. It's branded as a trilogy of games. So you're not just buying a Crash Bandicoot game. You're buying the Crash Bandicoot insane trilogy game. So I don't think it's fair to make that comparison. So I'm going to take your pitch as just pitching hit and run, if that's all right. If I can just take it from that, because that's the game you'd pick out the three.
Well, if I had to go for one out of three, yes, but I'm still a bit flabbergasted at this response, because I called it a trilogy in my pitch, but we live and we learn. So everyone's always trying to put me down.
I think the thing with me with hit and run, obviously, folk do want it remastered. It'd be a great game, but I think a lot of it is, would it lose its beauty? In a sense, I don't know. I feel that it's absolutely perfect for what it was, and I feel as if there was any. I think it's probably a testament to how good the game is. I think if they did remaster it and made changes to a way to adapt to now, I think it would lose a lot of its soul and its beauty. So I feel it is one of them kind of the gems that can't be touched. In that sense, do you feel that a potential remaster could hinder the game? Obviously, you're going to say no, but I feel it could hinder the game experience and enjoyment purely because of how good it was.
I have to disagree with you there. I never felt at any point when I was playing Crash Bandicoot that I thought, oh well, this isn't as good as the original. The same for Spyro, and Spyro was my favourite game growing up. And the whole way through playing it, I've been enjoying it. I thought it was brilliant. Completed it, very quickly because I was obsessed with it when it came out. I think hit and run would be the same. I think people would absolutely jump on board with it, and I think it would hold up. I said it holds up with modern games, and I think people would genuinely love it. And I can't see people going, well, maybe this isn't as good as when I first played it. I think people would be obsessed with it.
I think we've just got to agree to disagree here. I think
we've got to agree you're wrong.
I think folk, you're right. Folk will buy it, but I don't know if the enjoyment will be the same. But we'll agree to disagree. It's fine. It's just that as we've got two different viewpoints on it, so that's it.
Well, Rhys is dealing with a lot of criticism there. And I'm not going to toe anyway, but it's definitely interesting. Just for clarity purposes, when Rhys sent me his pitch, obviously they vetted to make sure it hadn't been taken. I was under the presumption that he was sending me those three games purely to make sure that he got the Simpsons games he wanted, in case he picked hit and run, somebody else picked hit and run. I didn't know that it was going to be a trilogy. I think that's kind of where some of the dispute came from, was the Crash Bandicoot game trilogy was Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3, where technically this isn't Simpsons hit and run 1, 2, and 3, it's three different games. However, I will stick
Enough
with my
backpedaling, Lewis. This is your problem as well. You made this, all right?
Yes.
Right, get your house in order.
I'm moving house. It's Rhys's trilogy. He's kept it, and Jack makes a good point where perhaps this game was too good at the time, and bringing it back now could potentially set up a failure. But you know what? The only way to know is if and we know this to be true. Matt Groening, they're watching this podcast on YouTube right now, and they're like, you know what, this guy's got a point. So if this game ever comes out, Big Picture has 20% ownership in the stock. Anyway. Moving on, and the reason I put this guy last is because I wanted Stuart to have as much time as he can to develop criticisms and rants, because Jack is going next. And Jack, what is your pick?
I think obviously we spoke about it in the episode that I absolutely love Rayman 2, The Great Escape, and you can probably tell by now that is not what I'm pitching to be the next remaster, and you can probably tell that Stuart's absolutely seasoned the fact. I did ponder about doing Rayman 2, but I thought no, because that's just purely for my own enjoyment. Folk probably don't have the need or the want for that, even though it's a great game. It absolutely should be remastered. I don't think it should be the next remaster. I also did think Cars are a brilliant game, but that's too much of a comical answer. So to absolutely stab Stuart, put that knife in it and twist it so hard without him knowing, because I got this in before, my pitch is 007 Nightfire to be the next game remaster. Stuart, I'm terribly sorry, because I know that we both have an absolute love for this game, but I had to get it. I had to throw in that red herring of the Rayman 2 to be my pitch, but no, I've went for 007 Nightfire. It was released in 2002, and it was when Bond celebrated its 40th anniversary, and it was the release of Pierce Brosnan's last outing as James Bond had died another day. At the time, story-wise, it was an original plot, and it was absolutely unparalleled to what was brought out at that time. It was just amazing. You had a really good single-player experience with a story, which we get to here, and it's like this. It has everything that you want from a kind of James Bond movie. Like if you watch that as a movie, you'd be like, "Oh, that's a really good James Bond movie." And they managed to bring that original kind of plot to a game. So we got Paris by night. You're fighting and you're driving in your car, always Aston Martin, all those gadgets and whatnot. You've got the Austrian Alps. You're in Japan. You're in an evil lair in the Pacific Island. You're all over the story. You're at a space station trying to stop a missile going off. It was probably like the heyday of like James Bond theme shooters. Obviously, had like From Russia and Love and whatnot. And that got remastered at one point. And that was really good. But Nightfire at that point, it was just absolutely golden. I think one of the main criticisms I think with it is that the single player campaign is only about 2.5 to 3 hours long, but the kind of one of the main selling points with Nightfire was that its local multiplayer experience was absolutely phenomenal, unparalleled to anything at that time, with the wealth of characters, the variety of maps, the extensiveness of those maps as well. Unlimited amounts of fun you could have with that, with the different weapons you get and whatnot. And I think the good thing is, if it was done now, it would be in that wider online scale, so that just even adds to the amount of fun you get. So I think with our remastered graphics, bringing the original sense back with this original plot, the wider multiplayer that would come on, I think that 007 Nightfire rightfully serves as the game that should have the next remaster, considering that there is no current scope right now of a 007 game. I think Nightfire would slot in perfectly as that remaster.
Jack, I love Nightfire too. And you conveniently missed out a James Bond game when you were talking about it. Some would consider, maybe the classics, would consider GoldenEye and Nintendo 64 the best Bond game ever. And there was a remaster of that, and it was frankly terrible, and no one likes it. It's considered one of the worst remasters of all time. So I guess my question to you is, they've already taken a Bond game from an old era and ruined it. How would they take a Bond? Do you think they would be able to take a Bond game from this era and bring it to the current era?
I think purely because of where game development and like the kind of the technological capacity that we're at now, I think they absolutely can, and I think Nightfire would serve as that bit. Also, they've tried it and failed, but I don't think, like with GoldenEye, as they said, they tried and they failed, but that was at a point maybe where we weren't at a very good technological peak, I guess, so to speak, compared to what it's at now. I feel that Nightfire would serve that purpose really well with what's there. I think the game would just look amazing. I still think it would play as well as what it did back then. I think it would just be phenomenal.
I'm just waiting on Stuart to get ready to unleash his rage.
Before he does that, I just want to add on to what Adam said. I think if you're going to release a James Bond game, a remastered one, it would have to be GoldenEye. It's the most popular James Bond game, and people to this day are still playing it online. There's YouTube videos posted pretty much daily of it, and everyone's trying to get, well, not everyone, a lot of the players that still play it are constantly trying to get the world record for the mission speed run, which is I've watched lots of videos on it. It's crazy. I really enjoy it, and I think if you were going to remaster a James Bond game, it would have to be GoldenEye.
Well, I just didn't do it because obviously, as Adam said, it has been done. So I wasn't wanting to do something that had already been done from that point. Obviously, it's just it just wasn't in my equation for that. I still don't think I would have picked GoldenEye. I rightfully think that the 2010 game is shit. I think you're kind of agreeing with Adam, but kind of taking it in a different way than what he was. So that's my answer. I think with GoldenEye already having that remaster remake, I don't think it should serve to have another one.
Well, Stuart, I think it's just gone silent. So while we wait for the votes to be sent in, and if you guys could send me your votes, quickly recap what we've got here. So we have Jack with Nightfire, pretty solid pick. We have Rhys with his Simpsons collection, both Hit and Run, Road Rage, and Simpsons the Game. Stuart with his pitch of Fallout 1, and Adam with his pitch of Elder Scrolls Oblivion. So while I wait for the votes to come in, I thought we'd go back to our audience and see what they sent us and what they wanted to see remastered and, what their picks were. So coming in first is David with a damn good pick, in my opinion, was the original Jack and Daxter trilogy. If you haven't played those games on the PlayStation, Rhys, if you have one, please go ahead and get it. And we also have David Campbell, former guest, friend of the show with Digimon World. Ollie with Simpsons Hit and Run. So looks like Rhys has got himself a vote at least. Rhys voted again, but sent another pitch again, but he picked FIFA 21.
That's it. FIFA
21. Stuart also pitched his own Burnout 3. What's going on here? Sorry, I'm tallying the votes and we may have an issue here.
My backup was Jack and Daxter trilogy. So would you say it was David suggesting that, but not David Campbell?
It's a different David.
David Hockney. Brilliant, David Hockney. Great choice.
My backup would have been. Sorry. My backup would have been Cars, so then Jack slammed it by calling it a comical answer.
I'll do you one better. Rhys, my backup was Nightfire, and Jack slammed it by pitching it. I couldn't even put that in the Instagram poll. I had to come up with my third one out my arse.
Sorry, Stuart.
Grant also with
Jack
Metal Gear Solid. And to be honest, I can see that happening. Daniel is pitched AC2. Now, I didn't really reach out for clarification, so there's a 50-50 shot here of either being the marvelous Ace Combat 2, the original PlayStation 1997 game of airfighter combat, or Assassin's Creed 2. Nobody tell them about the Ezio collection. And then Blair with LA Noir, a very well-loved game.
Oh, that would be good.
Also,
that's why they got a remastered as well.
It's an interesting pick, and I never thought this would ever happen in the history of the big picture. But we've got a four-way tie.
Jesus Christ,
we've had this already.
we've got a what? A four-way tie.
Yeah, everybody's voting for every other person. So this is what I'm going to do because it's my episode. No one wins. Fans will decide the true winner, and that's how it will go down in the history books of the big picture.
Oh my God.
No!
Wait a minute. We've had four-way ties before. We've got protocol in place for a four-way tie.
Host decides the winner.
I don't want to be put in that position. Right. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a minute. I'm going to time you for a minute. Actually, no, I'm not. Fuck that. It's gone too long. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with my pick I want to do it with. So my pick is Adam. Adam, you're the winner.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Lewis. You know what? See, when I pitched it, I thought I wish Lewis was voting because I think he would vote for me. And I was right in a way.
My reason behind picking your vote is what you said there. There's a gap in the market for RPGs. They need something good. The last good one was Witcher 3, which came out in 2015. There hasn't really been much since. It's been a good couple of years. So, yeah, that's my pick. And I was going to vote Rhys if he picked one game, but I don't agree with his take.
If you didn't agree with it, you shouldn't have accepted it.
So it's been a very interesting and very lengthy episode today. So we hope you guys have all enjoyed it. Jack, thank you for joining us today with your nice ribbing of Stewart there.
Not a problem. I do apologise to Stuart because I know that I guess the red herring of folk just assuming maybe I was going to take Rayman 2 where I threw him off, but I think that Nightfire is too good a game not to have in this conversation.
Thank you, Rhys, as well for joining us. I know I took the mick out of you for the Simpsons pick there, but yeah, I'm sorry, man.
These things happen. Great job hosting, Lewis.
I would like to think that's true, but we'll see. Thank you, Stuart. I offer my apologies too for absolutely roasting you at the start.
That's all right. I'm always happy to take a ribbon from Jack, as you said.
Wait, what?
Thanks, Adam, for joining us as well and taking part in this illustrious journey.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Before we go, Stuart, would you like to plug our next episode?
Yes, I have it in front of me right now. Our next episode,
Mandalorian season 3.
Season 3. Here we go. Oh wait, it's the best sitcom. Really?
Ooh.
Yes, best sitcom. I'll be hosting that. Where we talk about sitcoms. Back to you, Lewis.
That's all we have time for today. Good luck. Follow us on social media @_the big picture. Share with your friends. Bye bye.